All right, now we are officially recording.
Okay. Could I have a roll call, please?
Kate Bricks.
Here.
Jenny Butler.
Here.
Jenny Cummings.
Here.
Marge Scavone. Marge will be joining us, I'm sure, in a second. Pete Hensler.
Here.
Anna Keeney.
Here.
Kate Levier.
Here.
Scott McLean.
Here.
And Molly Cochran.
Here.
Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, it is time for, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
There aren't any adjustments to the agenda tonight.
All right. We have time for public input, but seeing no public or very few, we would like to now introduce Randy Crockett to do information at Gordon Small Middle School.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to present to the board, although I wasn't picturing it to go quite like this. I'm hoping you got an attachment from Terry Coolidge with our final version of the JSMS belief statement. I'm seeing some nodding, so that's a good sign. The version that's in your packet that you got for the budget under the mission and vision of the school was second draft. And as you know, teachers love to revise and wordsmith, so it took 3 drafts, but we now have our final product. There's a few changes in there, they're very similar. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about why we do this, what this is all about, a little bit of the background and also purpose for having it, and what we use it for. I'm not going to go through each point by point on the statement, but I'll certainly be happy to give further clarification or answer questions on that as well. But I thought I would start with what's it for and why we have it. Sound good? A little bit of nodding. All right, that's a good sign. So we actually, this is our 3rd iteration of a belief statement. I believe the first one we did was about 7 years ago. And the purpose of this was to really zero in on, hi, Marge.
Hi. Sorry, I got lost.
That's all right. The purpose is to zero in on important components of school climate and providing a top-notch education to the students. As we went through the process the first time about 7 years ago, we found that the things that we were bringing up kind of ended up falling into 2 distinct categories. And one was around school culture and climate and just basically how the humans in the building treat each other, you know, kids and staff. And the second part, or the second set of components, was really around the academic piece of school and how to make instruction effective. And so this year in the fall, when we went back and looked at our older version of the belief statement, I suggested to the staff that we keep the 2 main areas the way they were, the top one being around climate and culture and school environment, and then the lower section being around academics. So we did wordsmith some of those components in the headings. So social emotional skills is what we're now calling what 7 years ago we would refer to as the climate culture of the school. And that really lined up nicely with some of the work that's going on in the district already and some of the work we've done at RES and Jordan Small over the last several years. And then the learning environment specifically around academics at the bottom. So I look at this as not, we call it a belief statement because it's not just about a vision, what we'd like to see. It's not just about our mission. So our mission, I guess you could say, is the first full sentence. Our primary goal is to provide students with academic skills and habits necessary to ensure success at the high school level, the secondary level. I mean, that really is the mission of a middle school, any middle school, I would contend. But then to make it really a belief statement, you have to get down into some specifics. And please note that there are verbs in every sentence that are in italics. That means there's something you can take action on. It's concrete enough that it can be observed, it can be part of our reflection and our kind of self-monitoring of how we're doing on these things, because they're actionable things and you can measure how you're doing in various ways. So it does have to me, a more specific purpose than a mission or a vision statement, in that you can reflect back upon it, you can gather information and data on some of these components, and then make adjustments. And so that's why we ended up calling it a belief statement. I think I stole that from somebody involved with risk in their one of their presenters, which goes back now 8 or 9 years, I guess. I've lost track. But it just seems to be more clear to staff as to what it is. So this is a bit of a process to develop something like this with a group of teachers. It requires a lot of opportunities to discuss ideas about education. And frankly, the process is just as valuable as the final product, because going through the process in various forms, reflecting on some components, looking at resources, looking at current thinking of best practices, and having discussions about those things within the staff gets us to more common knowledge and common understanding and a clearer direction for the whole school. So as we work through this process, we used professional development time from October, we used staff meetings, and we actually finished it up at a staff meeting back in February, I believe, and then use this as a springboard for some further discussions this past March, or this past professional development day in March, 2 weeks ago. It seems like it was longer than that ago, but it was just 2 weeks ago. Back in the olden days, when we used to go to school, we'd have professional development and we'd all be together, and we didn't have to do it on video. But anyway, now we're in modern times. I digress. So the process sometimes is that I would provide resources, reading materials for people to read to themselves, read ahead of time, and think about. Sometimes they would share that with a partner. Sometimes they would share that in a group. Sometimes we would have full staff discussion. And I try to set up different ways to facilitate those discussions to get people surfacing their best thinking, and also to look at current practices. So we looked at reference material from John Hattie, Marzano, Dr. Marcia Tate, who I got to see last spring at USM, people that have some good insights and really essential components of good instruction. And so that takes a while. And we had, like I said, several different opportunities to have conversations in different formats. And then the team leaders, the teacher leaders at Jordan Small and I would keep coming back to take that input from the staff, refine it down, and then bring it back to them, get their further input. So we went through that back and forth 3 times before the final product was done. So like I said, it is a bit of a process. It's a little time consuming, and sometimes it's hard to do something like this when you know you're trying to learn how to use the Ready Math program, and you know you're trying to improve writing instruction, and you need some time to work on that with your colleagues and those types of things. But I feel this is really something that can guide us for the next 3 years. And so we actually used it a bit as a reflection tool this past workshop day to talk about where this points us. We spent a lot of time talking about differentiation. So if you look down in the second section, staff will continue to create a learning environment that promotes each student's engagement, self-motivation, achievement, and increased independence. And so how do we get to motivation and engagement? And one of the ways you do that is to differentiate instruction. So we had a lengthy discussion at that last workshop day about not only differentiating instruction, but differentiating curriculum, differentiating assessment, and then what does differentiation mean? And as you may gather, if you know some teachers, everybody has their own opinions about some of these things, and also some, I would say, things that they're really strong with in differentiation. That's part of their practice. They don't even think about it anymore. It's just what they do. And other things that didn't cross their mind that colleagues are doing they don't even know about. So we had some really good full group discussion about differentiation as a springboard from this. And we also then looked at that moving into our continued work to have more interdisciplinary units, more interdisciplinary opportunities between any content areas where there's a good match. We don't go looking for something just to try to match up, music and science. We say, where is there a natural connection in the curriculum so that we're not having kids functioning in these sort of compartments all the time, that you can apply your math knowledge in science class. You can apply that in art class sometimes. And kids tend to compartmentalize those things unless we tell them to uncompartmentalize them and use them in the different areas. So there's been a lot of sort of organic work going on this year. I've been encouraging it since last year, but not mandating or forcing it between various staff members at Jordan Small. And we've got some great ideas percolating, some things already in the works. But also as we start to move both middle schools towards more project-based opportunities, more interdisciplinary work, we're going to need to build our skill set around that. And so we use that lens to think about this belief statement. Will it help us with that? And everybody was comfortable with keeping that in mind, that we're headed towards a more project-based interdisciplinary environment. And how do we'll work out the details of that as we go along, and starting hopefully in June. But that we have a good template here of what's important in instruction, even if it's not project-based, even if it's very traditional at some times, what's important in instruction. And this becomes a reflection tool, this belief statement, for us to say, are we doing these things? So I'm very transparent with the staff that this goes on the website, this gets shared with the school board. And if a parent calls me and says, hey, I don't think you guys are really doing this. You say it's on your belief statement, but you're not really doing a very good job with that. That's good feedback for us. That's information we can use to improve. And we can also use this as a lens for ourselves to reflect back on individual practices and school practices and say, where can we use some improvement? Or what are we just getting started with and we're not really experts at? And some things on here we're very good at, and some things on here we need to work on. So it also becomes a bit of a roadmap or some kind of a lens to use for periodic reflection. And ultimately, I'm curious to hear from the high school teachers down the line. How are we doing with the students that come out of Jordan Small? Are they prepared? And then we can get specific and say, well, are they, independent workers, or do they work at these higher learning levels, or do they need a lot of support and they tend to stay at the, the comprehension level? Those types of things this is a living document, hopefully, and it's a useful document that over the next few years we will use to look at our own practices. So that was a lot all at once. But that's pretty much the gist, and I'm happy to answer questions about the process or the product in any way.
Nobody's raising their hand. So I guess, oh, Scott, you have to unmute. Okay.
Randy, I think that this is actually really great. I really kind of like what you did here.
Thank you.
But I am kind of curious, do you have, so referencing back to, you know, if a parent calls up and says, you know, I'm not quite sure you're actually doing, you know, this, anything that you have documented in the belief statement here, do you have any type of like a backwards planning guide to be able to achieve a lot of these individual goals that you have outlined here? Can you explain the process as to how you're going to be able to, you know, say, yes, we're able to, students and staff model respect, patience, compassion. I know that's kind of a difficult one to, you know, document, but anything like that.
Right. So some of these might require different types of feedback. So like, you could survey students to get feedback on some of the things in the top section by creating statements that, you know, you wouldn't ask them to just agree with the belief statement. You would ask them questions that would give you information about, you know, how they feel about acceptance and courage and empathy, because those values are, as you say, harder to measure. Other things are much more concrete, especially in the lower section. So, you know, it's easy for us as administrators to go into a classroom and observe and ask kids to articulate what they're expected to learn in order to reach achievement. I mean, that's quick information to gather. Or let's say a parent calls up and said, you know, it says you differentiate instruction, but my son's science teacher does a lot of chalk and talk, and they just basically lecture the whole class. Okay, we need to look at that. I need to look at that and then see if that's true. And if it is, then you go to that individual staff member and say, okay, I need to help you with differentiation. Here's some ideas. Here's some things we're going to work on that, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's how I see it being used. For instance, you know, students recognize that failure, productive struggle, and perseverance are part of the learning process. That's a little harder to measure, but we do have habits of work grades, and we do have anecdotal data from teachers about how kids are handling challenges in general, academic challenges in general. Did that answer your question, Scott?
I think so. I think what I'm really kind of curious about is, you know, students reflect on their own progress, recognizing that failure, productive struggle, and perseverance are part of a learning process. So just taking that bullet point right there,
yep.
Is there a way that you might be able to implement a series of goals to maybe not so much document that, you know, yes, you have done that, but to be able to demonstrate, hey, listen, this is how we are going to achieve this particular goal within the belief statement type of thing.
Right. So like that one in particular would be asking students to self-reflect, say after a big exam or while they're working on a major project or presentation, and, you know, the teacher asking specific questions of the kids to help guide their self-reflection and think about what they knew when they started, what they know now, how they feel about their learning, because there's a lot of research that says if you're reflective of your learning periodically, it actually deepens the learning and also helps you set goals for the future if you came up short. You know, relative formative feedback is more teacher driven, for instance, so we can measure that. How often do kids receive feedback from their teachers that is on time and helpful to their learning? So each of these kind of has maybe different components or different ways that it would be quantified. Like the last bullet, increasingly complex thinking, I mean, we can observe that in the classroom. What are the students doing in their work? What is being asked of them? What's the level of the work on a taxonomy? So this is actually work that's ongoing with the administrative team right now, where we're using a survey tool or a collection tool to go around to classrooms and just look in for 5 minutes and figure out if we know where they are in the taxonomy, and depth of thinking, depth of knowledge, and so forth. So I think each of the bullets might require some different ways to reflect, collect data, and then action steps would be more specific for that bullet.
Okay.
Oh,
thank you.
So, Randy, if you were to go into a classroom and you went there 5 times and every single time you saw them only doing the remember and not doing any higher level thinking, that's a conversation you would have with the teacher.
Correct. Yeah. And we didn't do this step yet, but I'm hoping to do a crosswalk between the belief statement and where those components show up in our evaluation system, specific, by number and letter, so that I can refer back. It's not a separate thing in that respect. It's really just a more specific for JSMS focus, but all these components are part of good teaching. And I think they're all captured to some degree in our supervision evaluation system and in our documents. But I will have to make it transparent, I think, for teachers to realize that if I'm asking them to work on differentiation, that is a certain number and letter on that rubric that we use, on that scoring guide that we use for evaluations.
Okay. Anybody have a question? All right. Thanks, Randy. I really appreciate it. It was really good. I always like, I know the background of all this work that you do. I mean, I know how long it takes to get there. So I always appreciate seeing it.
Thanks.
And because I know the sweat, toil, and tears that it took to get there.
There was only a few small fights that broke out, just a few.
I'm also, just one second, I'm also glad, Marge, just one second, to see Tom Nash's name there, because it was the press for a while. And I thought, darn, the press guy looks a lot like Tom. So.
It actually said the Prez. It was an old account I used when I did some national work, and I was the president of our national organization, so it said the Prez. I'm looking at that going, oh my gosh, I need to change that. So, I'm sorry.
Thanks, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Marge, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a quickie. Randy, how long do you think it would be before you would see some results from this, that you could come back to us and say, okay, here's where we are in our plan?
I would say December at the earliest, probably close to a year.
Okay, great. It sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the cost center presentations, and we'll start with Randy Crockett.
Since I'm already here.
Yeah.
You're already here.
We're going to do Jordan Small first, and then I'm going to ask Beth to join me for RES. Jordan Small is going to be kind of boring, so I hope. There's one small adjustment. If you're looking at my cover sheet with, what's it titled? Budget cover sheet. The one that has last year and this year in the table.
Yep.
Everybody with me?
Mm-hmm.
The only change, I believe, you will note that music is 0.1 FTEs different, and that's just a balancing between shared staff at Manchester and Jordan Small. There is also, and I don't know if it's on your sheet or not, because on my sheet it's not accurate. It should say 1.0 administrator, and that should also occur at RES. So part of my salary this year is budgeted to RES. In the future, there will be the two separate salary lines. So I know that Stacy made that adjustment on her end, but my cover sheet doesn't reflect it. I don't know if yours does or not.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Do you want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick one.
Whoa, are you ready? Just 1 second. Are you ready? Are you finished with that? Anything else you want to highlight, Randy? Just those two?
I think I've covered some of the other components from the cover sheet with my discussion about the belief statement.
Okay.
So obviously, we are heavily involved in implementing Ready Math and CPM algebra for the 8th grade students who are involved. And I mentioned the interdisciplinary piece, and project-based learning in the future being a bigger focus across all content areas for the whole school. There are a couple little increases. The STEM supply budget is up a little bit, and that will help support materials for project-based learning. And I've also asked for in the curriculum instruction and assessment budget some professional development money for time to work with teams of teachers a few days over the summer to help do some planning to get that rolling with project-based ideas and units that they need the time to work on prior to school starting. We're not going to try to be building these units while school's in session. So,
right.
And I am going to use the STEM teacher position a little bit differently to do more interdisciplinary work versus a pull-out class, which is what it is now, so that those projects will be implemented in conjunction with science, social studies, math, wherever it fits. We actually had an interdisciplinary project with reading and rocketry in ELA.
That's great.
This year in 6th grade. So that type of thing will hopefully continue to grow. Yeah, so as far as dollars and cents, there's a little bit of reallocating and moving things around, but it doesn't create any major increases.
Okay, Marge?
Yeah, I just got one, and it's just a quickie. Randy, do you have any ed techs? Because you have none on your sheet.
We have, our library is staffed by an ed tech 3, and she's the only regular ed tech.
Okay.
We have 4 special ed techs, of course, in Lisa's budget.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. That's all I had.
That was easy.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Okay, anyone else have a question? I think, don't see any little hands, so I think we're all set. Thanks very much, Randy.
One down, one to go.
One down, one to go. And now, Raymond Elementary School.
All right, for the budget, we are asking for an additional 3rd grade teacher. Currently, we have 59 students in 2nd grade. That would put us at 29 to 30 students per class with 2 teachers. So if we add a 3rd grade teacher, that would be about 19 to 20 students per class for next year. We are also asking for an increase in our guidance, our school counselor. She's currently 2.5 days at RES and often spends extra time on Tuesdays staying late to make contacts with parents and fulfilling the needs because the requests for her services keeps on growing. She provides lessons, group instruction, individual sessions with students. She's also expanded our mindfulness and social emotional learning in the school. So any task I've asked her, she's welcomed it and has embedded it into lessons in the school. So that would put us at 3 days, full days for our school counselor. The one other area is we're just asking for a little bit of an increase in the K2 budget for supplies. As they make materials at the K1 level tends to be a lot more hands-on activities. And so that's the area that tends to request more materials every year. Do you have any questions?
I don't see anything. We know that this is a lean budget for everyone, so this is going to be a really short meeting, I think.
Thanks, Beth.
You're welcome.
Christina had a question.
Sorry, I did have a question. I know just the administrative salary shift was not really a savings. It was just like an adjustment from one school to the other. But when I looked at the administrative salary in this budget, it didn't really appear to be any less. I don't know if I read that wrong. Like it was,
Can you tell us what page you're on?
On the pink sheet,
Uh-huh.
page 63 of 83, about
Okay.
a third of the way down, administrative salary. If I read that right.
Yeah, we might want to check with Stacy and make sure that both JSMS and RES admin salary and benefits are calculated accurately.
It's actually, if I can jump in here for a second, it's on our list for version 5. Version 4 had the old salaries on it, so it's on the list to take care of.
Okay, that was all.
Great. Is that it for everybody? Okay. Thanks, Randy, and thanks, Beth.
You're welcome.
I hope you have a nice drive home.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Thanks.
Okay, I think it's Tom, isn't it? Now, next it's Tom Nash and adult education.
And it's, yeah, Tom Nash, not the press or not the president. So it's nice seeing you all. And there's some people actually I've never met before, Christina and Molly and Kate. So hello, nice meeting you. You had a very long budget request form that was sent in. It's my opportunity kind of to, kind of highlight our program and the goals and the outcomes and what we've been doing to support the district's strategic plan. So it's a little bit longer than others, but you probably had some extra time to look at it over the last several days or last few weeks. So I'll just jump into it real quick, is that we have a lot of things that we've been doing that support our work as it relates to distant learning. That's going to be even more important for us for the rest of this year, as well as moving forward next year. Between workforce training and providing technology for students, both at our facility and them out and letting them have that. And that was actually one of the things we had put in our budget that we took out. We were hoping to increase by about $14,000, upgrade our computers for our learning center, which we use for student support, but also for high stakes testing. So, and we're going to try to work on a different solution to that. But overall, my budget, the local appropriation is not increased at all. And then that's something that Chris and I have talked about, and Marge is aware that she's on my advisory board. We have done fairly well over the years, not having to have a local tax appropriation increase. We've been able to access our carry forward fund, and that carry forward fund has been built up over the years due to the I guess the popularity of our enrichment programming, which pays for itself, but also provides additional funds for overhead costs. So if I can jump right into where our major increases are, it's really, it's salaries and benefits, and I'm sure the benefit side of it is going to be reduced based on some of the insurance costs. So I know there will be a version 5 of my budget coming out as well. But we are putting some additional funds in, and I don't know what you're all looking at, but we're putting some additional funds in our high school completion, which is high school diploma and high set program, as well as our literacy instruction, which includes basic skills instruction and English for speakers of other languages. We have had an increase in requests for those types of programs. We think we're going to have even more so now after we get through this challenge that we're being faced with. We were hoping to provide some additional summer programs before this all happened, and what we called the summer melt, and working on students that might be interested in going on to college but didn't feel they were ready yet. So even it was recent high school graduates, but also maybe someone that had been in the workforce, was looking to get retrained, actually upgrade their academic skills before they went on to post-secondary education or training. But we were going to try to target the recent high school graduates who maybe were postponing their post-secondary career, maybe hoping to go to college in January, but we want to make sure that we helped them with their skills so they didn't regress in some of the like basic math and writing skills. So that's where some of the increases were. That's where our major increases were in those two categories. And there are a few things here and there that have increased in terms of like printing costs for our catalog, which is our major marketing tool, and some other things. As for those that have never heard my budget presentation, it's really difficult sometimes to predict what our costs are going to be any given year. We look at our mid-year cost, expenses and revenues. When I put the budget presentation together, we compare that with the end of the year costs and revenues from the previous year, what current trends might be we might be faced with, what we can expect for requests and challenges, and we put together a best case, our best guess budget. And I hate to say that, but we hope, the whole adage, if we build it, we hope they come. That's really what we do, and we base it on community need, on perceived as well as actual, and then we put it out there and hope that the students sign up for it. We don't have a population of students that we can count on from year to year like the K-12 system does, give or take, a few hundred students here and there. So that's how we put our budget together, and we do the best again can to predict what our expenses will be based on some data that we have available to us. So that's really my presentation. I had a lot more to say, but I know that you wanted it to be quick. But I really do want to mention that everything I put together in my presentation may be amended based on where we're at when we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Because we might see a lot of adults that are looking to go back to school, work on their basic skills. Some that may need to have new job skills put in place. So I think we're going to see an uptick in academic programming, academic requests, as well as workforce training. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see a downtick probably in our enrichment programming. I just think the discretionary funds that people would have had will not be there. That doesn't mean we're not going to offer those types of programs. I think people will still need to focus on their own well-being, but we do anticipate probably a downturn in some of our revenues that we were expecting. On the upside of that, I do work on the state level and the national level, and we're hoping to get $1.2 million from the state for workforce training. That's in the governor's budget, and I'm working on the national level to bring in an additional $200 million to the country for workforce training. So that'll hopefully trickle down to Maine and trickle down to our program, but it's nothing we can say for sure we're going to get, but I can't see why we wouldn't be getting some of those funds for local workforce training. So there you have it.
Thanks.
If you have any questions.
Yeah, Pete, did you have a question?
I did, but when Tom went on, he kind of answered it. My question was surrounding, like, in your experience, what happens in a downturn economy if you see a spike in, the job training courses. So you've answered that. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, I really do anticipate that we'll be working more closely with our local hub, which is, we call it Hub 8. It's all the regional adult ed programs. We do a lot of joint programming, workforce training that we share. Like, we don't offer CNA course with our program, but we do offer that in other adult ed sites, and we send students there. We do a lot of online training. We're going to increase that offer. We hope to increase our, again, our local, it's called high stakes testing. So we'll increase that. But yeah, we'll be seeing more work with the Department of Labor and the career centers to help support the adults that need to be retooled and retrained.
Thanks. Before you go, Marge, I have a question. Looking at the budget sheet, the cover sheet.
Yeah.
Could you explain, and I know it's an accounting thing that I don't get, but on 1920, it has 7,032 as a loss, or as
I think, I don't put that together, but I'm assuming that's a decrease from the previous year.
So
Would
it was
that be-
decreased from 1819?
I really don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. And then
Yeah, Jenny, that's correct.
okay, thank you. That's
Yeah, that's what my assumption was, but yeah, then this year we have a $6,000 increase, roughly 6,800.
all right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Marge was next.
Yeah, Tom, yeah, in your revenues, on your carryover, and you have a big jump from last year, almost 30,000, well, 29,680. Where does that carryover come from now?
It is a carry forward fund that we have access to. It's based on our revenues. You know, basically it's revenues from general enrichment classes and workforce training programs that we don't need to spend during during that specific fiscal year that gets carried forward. Then we're able to access that to either lower the local appropriation or to do additional programming. So we've been tapping into that for several years now, and it will be depending on what this year ends up like. It'll be gone after this year.
Oh, so you won't. Okay, so you could possibly not have any carryover next year.
Correct.
Okay.
And then Marge, if I could just add here, something that Tom and I have been discussing is, first of all, some additional revenues, whether it be looking at cost of programs. In addition, also taking a look at what grants might be available out there, either through the hub or through the state to supplement, because Tom is right, that carryover fund that's been there has been depleted over time. And I think part of it is that been through some grants and things that were carried over. And again, the revenues had allowed us to kind of have a little bit of a carryover. But I think in last year's audit was right around $56,000 was where we were left over with carryover. So it depends on where we end this year and then going into the following year. But I think that local appropriation has been frozen where it's been at for quite a while.
Yeah. And Chris is right. We looked at, whether we could raise our course fees. We talked about that. I don't see how we're going to be able to do that with with a straight face coming up. Even if we did, add a $5 more per course, you're talking about maybe a couple $1,000s of extra revenue. We talked about we can increase our testing, our high stakes testing, and that could generate another 4,000 or 5,000, which is great. We are looking at local grants. We do have some grants with United Way through Greater Portland that we've been able to access. We're going to, I'm sure, pursue more in that area. The workforce training grants I mentioned from the state and the feds, if that comes through. And we looked at our per pupil cost academic wise. Our per pupil cost for academic instruction is about $500. Our budget's about $95,000. Portland is $450 per student, and their local budget alone for instruction is almost $1 million. And we're kind of right in the middle. Lake Region had a per student cost of $1,300 for the academic students. So we're doing a good job of teaching our students, our adults, with the money we have. But I think we are going to be seeking out some additional revenue sources somewhere, somehow.
Pete?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Pete?
All right, thanks. Yeah, I'm sorry if you've already addressed it and I missed it, but what kind of impact is the current situation having on adult ed programming, both from a revenue and expense, and what are we doing for people that were enrolled in classes currently?
Yeah, our academic students, I'd be happy to send you the list of what we're doing there, Pete. But we're, providing blended learning opportunities. We actually been doing that all along. So students have access to what's called HiSET Academy, which helps them to prepare for the HiSET exam, so they can do it either in our facility or at home. People can access Odysseyware. So again, students that are looking to get some supplementary education for high school completion classes, they can again do it at home or do it in our facility. So those students are still engaged when they can be. Their parents probably that are at home taking care of the kids as well. So they have their own challenges, and probably education right now is not at the top of their list. But in our English as a second language students, we made information available to them. We sent out packets of materials to keep them busy for a couple of weeks. We do know that some of those adults do not have internet access. As for our enrichment programs, we postpone them instead of cancel them, because there's fees involved on our end that we have to eat if we cancel classes. So we try to postpone them as long as we can. And we probably are going to have to end up canceling most of the classes. And it's interesting enough, we have one class starting in May that has been so popular, we don't know what to do about it. It's hunter safety. So people are looking to find ways to be self-sufficient and reliant, I guess. So we don't know what we're going to do about that, if we can push it out to later in May or June or this summer. But most likely, most of our classes will be canceled. There'll be a loss of revenue of several $1,000s in both lost registration fees and actual processing fees moving forward. So,
Tom, you said that the ELL classes or those people probably did not have internet access. Was that?
There are several, that do not have internet access, correct, yeah.
Would they qualify for the Spectrum internet access?
They probably would, and we're putting information out to them. I know that my academic coordinator, Kathy Chiffre-Renaud, texts students a lot, emails them if they have a email access, and lets them know what's available to them. So yeah, we try the best we can to get information to our students, but it's not always easy.
Yeah. Anyone have any other questions? Well, it's awfully hard work to put all of this together, and I really appreciate all of you, Randy and Beth and Tom as well. Thank you so much for the hard work.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on to Mr. Howell.
Sure. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about two cost areas. One is listed under superintendent in your books, and the other one that's listed there is underneath the assistant superintendent. So first of all, starting with the superintendent's cost center, you'll see a decrease there of 1%. And the only two employees who are within that cost center is me and Terry, or Terry and me. And within that, the difference that you see there is the difference in salaries and some benefit pieces between the previous superintendent and me. And so this reflects the recent increases for health insurance. But other than that, everything else is pretty much status quo. So not huge changes that are there. And if I could go to the Assistant Superintendent of Schools budget page, which is Director 12. And Molly, somehow I'll have to figure out how to get your book to you. It's right here in my office, right behind me. But this reflects all of the individuals that are in the business office, as well as Christine. And the increases that you see in there, and I'm on the pink pages, page 2 of 83. There's an increase there of $25,000 under other professional services. And this reflects some professional services and work that we know that we're going to be spending out next year in relation to a new middle school project for a new Wyndham Middle School. And we know we're going to have some professional service costs. In addition, we're going to have some planning costs that are associated with it. So that's what that cost is reflected. In addition, you'll see some increases there for insurance. And I did have some good news. I don't have the final number yet for insurance, but workers' comp, thanks to Mr. Duffy, our previous mod rate, and if you think about it, mod rate is what determines what your overall premium is going to be. Previous mod rate was 1.47 based upon some old accidents and injuries that the district had. And just simply for the public, If an insurance policy is typically 100,000, we're paying 147,000 on a 1.47 mod rate. I learned this afternoon that our new mod rate is in the high 8s and maybe 0.9. So could be a significant decrease. And it'll be interesting to see with 95% of our staff currently at home, the chances for slip, trips, and falls within the buildings decreases dramatically. But we've seen a significant decrease with the work of the safety team this year on workers' comp. And we're expecting to see a significant decrease in our premium for workers' comp coming up in this next year. So kudos to Mike Duffy and the work of the safety team for dropping that down. But otherwise, within that cost center for assistant superintendent, there really aren't any other major changes than what's previously there.
Marge?
Chris, on the white pages on 10 of 253, I was just curious, on the bottom. Now, I had thought that, and I might be wrong, I'm just asking, out of school for Raymond students, I thought that was decreasing, but it seems to be staying the same. Is that an in case type of thing? Is that a buffer?
No, part of it is that we also, while student numbers may be dropping a little bit, tuition is going up based on the state rate. And so as your numbers go up on tuition and numbers drop, they've been staying pretty stable for the overall cost. But we will continue to take a look at that. The other question that Stacy asked me today with the school shutdowns, do we expect that we're going to get any sort of reimbursement from schools? Not going to happen. I mean, everyone is doing distance learning at this point, and so whatever we're paying for out of district tuition, but that number is staying pretty stable at the moment.
Okay, just one more.
Go ahead.
Okay. If you go up the page up there, and we had talked a little bit about it when Jeannie was here on the transfer out for school nutrition, we put an additional $25,000 in there. Are we expecting a higher balance of unpaid lunches this year, next year? I'm sorry.
Well, given what we have observed in the district with recent food shaming bills, and that the rate and the percentage of individuals and families who aren't paying, that obligation is continuing to grow. Right now, obviously, we're not worrying about that. We're worrying about other things when it comes to food service, but our unfunded liabilities is going to grow, and it's grown because of that. So that is an additional buffer.
Okay.
With that transfer.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Thanks very much, Chris. Mr. Hanson, are you ready? You're on mute still, if you.
Hey, there we go. Gotta love the technology, huh? I gotta wear these glasses because I can't see you in when I'm trying to read. So I guess the joys of getting older, right?
Right.
So a lot of you have been through my budget presentation before. Did everyone receive the PowerPoint?
Yes, I did.
So if everyone has that, I won't spend a lot of time on it because you can read it and ask questions later. But one of the things I want to bring to your highlight, well, again, the mission that we have is really important to me, is that we operate these buildings in a way that the teaching staff can really focus on educational deliverables. And we don't always succeed at that, but that is the goal. And I'm very fortunate that the board has provided us a very good budget to maintain these buildings. And I'd like to bring it to your attention, when you look at the next slide, our major components, I thought it'd be helpful for you to see kind of where that stands. If you look at our roofing, you can see that we're in really pretty good place right now, particularly when you look at roofs guideline age life on those is for EPDM is about 30 years. Now EPDM is what stands for, basically it's a rubber roof, 60 mils thick. And that's what we have on most of our buildings. We do have some shingles and a built-up roof on the middle school, and we have a metal roof on the primary school. So when you look at this, you can see we're in pretty good shape. In the future, the concerns might start looking at things like the primary school roof, which is getting towards that 40 years life cycle, which is about a life cycle of a metal roof. And you can see Manchester School is coming up on that 30-year. But overall, we're in a really good place. Again, this is just an idea of where we're going. We look at our boilers and hot water heaters. Again, that's kind of the heart of our buildings. And you can see that this year we've made a huge impact on that. And when people look at that, they do say, wow, Manchester, those boilers are 47 years old. Are you worried about that? They were really, really, really good boilers when they put in.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing is there's 2 of them there. So until such time that we have concern with failure, it doesn't make any economic sense to replace them, if that makes sense to you. So when we look at our buildings, we have some pretty good redundancy. There's one building that kind of stands out that doesn't have redundancy, which is really key to our fleet, is RES. And so we're going to be looking at that in the near future. That boiler is a very good boiler. It's in there. That's the good news. But I think it's best practice to have redundancy in your heating plant. So we'll be looking at that in the future. But again, we're in a good place there. Final, the last portion of the puzzle is the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. I just wanted you to have that information so you see the background of where we're at and what the ages are and what some of the concerns are. Again, we're in pretty good shape. We have a few units that are starting to get old. You look primarily at Jordan Small School, the middle school, and a unit at Manchester, and a couple units at the primary school. Again, guideline age life for HVAC is 25 to 35 years. So you can see that, you know, a lot of the equipment has been put in the last 15, 20 years, which is great. So I guess the state of the state is that we're doing pretty well. And that's really a really great thing. So the next thing I want to talk about is really the types of capital investments that we have here that are in my budget. Now, my budget is very confusing if you look at it, because you'll see numbers going up and going down and going up and down all through the budget. It's unlike any other budget that's in the district that I'm aware of, and Chris can correct me, in that we have projects that go from cost center in 1 year to it's moved to another cost center the next year. So if you'll see swings, large swings in my budget. It's not that my overall budget changes drastically, but expenses change. And that's really important to understand. Those changes are primarily in what's called the MIP, or maintenance improvement projects. These are cash projects that are paid for in the fiscal year that are in our operating budget. And those are things that we usually can accomplish within the school year. And they tend to be small in nature. And I say small in nature, usually under $100,000. There are some that are larger than that, and one that comes to mind real quickly is the primary school site work and the Raymond Elementary School site work. We have to do that work with cash. So those are projects that tend to be larger than that. The second type of project we have is CIP, which stands for Capital Improvement Project, and that is a lease payment. So the boilers that we put in this past year for Jordan Small and High School, that's a CIP project, it's a lease payment. And the final project type of project we have is called a Capital Reserve Project, and that has been just an amazing tool for us to use to leverage year-end fund balance to continue to move ahead the condition of our buildings. I think it's really great about that from my perspective. It's not tied to the operating budget, so it can straddle fiscal years. And that's really helpful because not all our projects can get done starting in July 1 to August 15th is really kind of the window we have in the summertime. So it's nice to have that money is available other times of the year or a year ahead so we can get materials ordered and on site before the summer starts. So I say this every year, and probably some of you are getting sick of hearing this from me, but if we look at our physical plant, it's worth around $200 million. Okay, so, and I always say to you, if everything lasted 50 years, I would really need to have $4 million in capital replacements every year. Okay, That was what, and you know that not everything lasts 50 years. I've just told you that HVAC is 35 and roofs maybe 30 to 35. So that doesn't make the 50-year hurdle. So what we've been shooting for in our facilities budget for MIP and CIP is around 600,000 annually. So you can see there's a pretty big gap between 4 million and 600,000. That's really up from when I first got here. When I first got here, we were close to 200,000 annually. So my goal was to get that to 600,000, and then the balance. Last year we were able to provide $900,000 of CRP funding. That goes to about $1.5 million, which is just about halfway to that 4 million that we're looking at, that we'd like to have. Now, the other part that will augment that is the upcoming middle school project. That's an infusion of capital that will help provide kind of that buffer between the 1.5 and the 4 million we're talking about, because that will be a capital replacement that will get us kind of back on that curve. So when we look at the overall budget for CIP, this year we've increased it 18,000, or proposing 18,000, I should say. If you notice in the presentation I sent you, there's one highlighted in green and one highlighted in yellow. The green is a project that's going to come off this next year, and the yellow is the one new project. And the new project at the primary school is looking at replacing the 2 oldest air handles in that building. Previous to my starting here, 3 of the air handles were replaced and the air conditioning was added when they realized there was a huge problem with temperature on the 2nd floor of that building. This project here would replace the other 2. So they would all be relatively new. Again, those are 30-year plus old units, and we're really approaching a situation where they really are struggling to run and the filtration isn't great. It's really time to consider that. So that's the increase. It's about 8% increase on my CIP, moving that from like 231 to 249. So I'm not quite to the 300 that I shoot for. The other thing I haven't mentioned is that I try to balance the cash and lease payments at about equal amounts. And the reason I do that is flexibility. So a lease payment may be 3 or 4 years that we're tied into that payment. So all my capital funding is in lease payments. Something comes up, we can't move and shift and meet that need real easily without increasing the budget. So the goal is to have half in CIP and half in MIP, and we're close to that at 249 versus the 300. When we look at the MIP projects, we've seen about 2% increase in that from 300,000 to 305, and that's really balanced by the projects that we have proposed. There's resurfacing the track is one of the projects that are in there, and for some reason the number isn't quite right, but I will correct that in that spreadsheet because it's actually 100,000, not 80. I believe I made another change below that took something out. So this is really keeping this flat funded pretty much at 2%. You could argue whether it is or is not, but and again, this is really getting some work done that needs to happen. The track was resurfaced in 2011, and they said 7 years. We've gone 9. So I think we've done pretty well. We do have money in there for a new electronic sign in the front of the high school. We're hoping to have that partnered with help from the boosters and the music folks and theater, so that we're able to really make that be a project that will really improve our signage. As you can see, there is money to rehab Katahdin, which really includes adding a bathroom and adding a cooking and kitchen space in that area. We are planning on removing the oil tank at Manchester School. It actually has to come out. DEP says it's reached its end of its life, and the fire department connection in the gym is a result of really an initial building design that put the fire department connection in a place that's really inaccessible by the fire department. So we're actually going to correct that deficiency that was really since 1989. Really needs to be done. They've been asking me since I've been here to address it. And we're going to do this before we finish the gym floor. So it's a really good time to do it because we'll be sanding down that floor and refinishing it. You can see the gym floor wall and repair. We've had an issue with a masonry wall that's below grade with the water coming in and damaging the gym floor. We're going to correct that. And then the last 2 small MIPs are copper replacement. that are larger carpet replacements in Jordan Small and the primary school. So that's really kind of the outlining of what's going on with the project-based of the budget. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure you have questions as you go through the budget, and I will do the best I can to bring clarifications, come with changes. Because again, when a project comes out of a cost center, like the oil tank removal at the primary school, it was 28,000 last year. So this year they'll show a negative 28 in that line. And so it's kind of really confusing to follow that.
Pete?
Hey, Bill. On the track, just for clarification, are there any notable deficiencies right now, or is this strictly preventive maintenance so that there don't become any deficiencies?
Yeah, so if you go down the track, and of course the snow came, so I can't show you, but if you look at it, there's actually a wear layer that is the red that's on top of the black urethane. And that has a projected life of about 7 years. And we've actually got 9 years out of it. So it's actually a respace. So it is a PM at this point in time. And what I wouldn't recommend delaying that, because the fact that you can start to see the black underlayment on it, and we start wearing that, it becomes a bigger issue. So it's really time to do that. And we've had the vendor look at it. He's recommending it as well, that it needs to be done. And you know, I'm pleased we get 2 extra years out of it, but I wouldn't want to push it much further.
All right, thanks.
Kate?
Bill, thanks for the PowerPoint. It's really well done, and it gives me all the information I need. One question I have is for the Katahdin, where are you putting a bathroom?
Great question. So if you go into the Katahdin space right now, right next to their bathroom is a very small copy space, which they would like to convert into that second bathroom. So the good news is the wet wall is that wall that the copier backs up to. So literally we'd be making that other side, as you walk in, there'd be 2 doors. There'd be a bathroom on the right, bathroom on the left. So it's gonna require cutting the concrete and getting into the plumbing into the wet wall, but it is nicely situated to do that. And they really need 2 bathrooms too, because it's quite a few people with 1 bathroom. It's a real challenge.
Thank you.
Scott?
Hi, Bill. How are you tonight?
Doing great. Much better than the time I was supposed to be here.
Yeah, perfect. If I could, I've got a couple of questions in reference to the pink sheets.
Sure.
So my first question is on page 5 of the pink sheet. About 3/4 of the way down, we got trash removal is up by 100%. Just kind of curious if that is moving some funds around. It's, you know, it's only $2,000, but I'm kind of curious.
Okay, that's it. So that
something?
Yeah, no, that 920 that's an adjustment. It's district wide, and we've actually gotten better about throwing things away. We've been using the junk guys to haul stuff out, and that's just an increase to cover those costs that we haven't been covering. We've actually been in deficit on that account. So that's what that's about. We're actually trying to work on purge things that don't belong here anymore. And it's been a really good process because less handling of materials by our people, and it's worked well. So it is an actual increase for that.
Okay, so more like maybe like the dump guys or something like that?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is also some that district-wide also covers the dumpster that's out by the track that gets used for all those events. So there's a couple of different things that go into that, but yeah, primarily dump guys.
Typically though, it would fall under a different cost category. That's why I was kind of curious why there was a district-wide type of thing, so.
Yeah.
My next question is on page 8 of the pink sheets. About 3/4 of the way down, we got an increase in telephone for 276%. It looks like it's RES. I'm wondering if that was not allocated correctly and now it's being allocated correctly.
I'll have to check with Stacy on that. She does the telephone increases. That isn't something that I make adjustments for. So let me get back to you on that, Scott.
Okay.
I apologize, I don't have an answer for that, but
That's all right.
Yeah.
My next question is page 11 on the pink sheets.
Yeah.
Right near the top, we've got an increase of 149%. It looks like it's for Manchester for a 11,750. What project is that for the contracted services?
That's actually in my cover sheet. I talked about some increases in the budget for HVAC service contracts. That's actually for middle school. That's costing our 120 middle school. So that's an increase in our PM services now. So expanded the PMs to cover all our unit ventilators in the gym, as well as the classroom spaces and the boilers. And we were trying to self-perform some of those things. And Scott, we were not being successful in doing that. It was really impacting the kids. And the middle school has been particularly problematic in that when those units are noisy, it's really hard for teachers to teach. And being 1977 vintage, we've just found we've been much more successful in getting the contractors come in and get the PMs done. And we're doing now twice a year, which has made an improvement on the space. Now, having said that, they still were brand new in 77, so they are still problematic, but it's better.
Okay. So are we on a regular PM maintenance routine for all the HVAC systems?
We are now. We finished a lot of that work this past year, and we were again trying to self-perform with just 2 maintenance staff. And what we've been finding is that we're trying to get better at SchoolBoard and for all those work orders that there wasn't time to set aside to do some of the PM work. It just wasn't occurring, and it really needs to. So we found that just augmenting with contracted labor, it just allows Roy and Henry to focus on the day-to-day issues that come up, and they come up, and so it's been a better solution for us.
Okay.
Is PM preventive maintenance?
Correct. Yeah. I'm sorry if I start using acronyms. Please correct me because it's a jargon I'm used to.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I keep going, Janny?
Christina, can you wait? Okay, go ahead.
All right. Just a couple lines below that, we've got Wyndham High School contracted services, 211%. Is that the barrel roof?
No, that is the same HVAC contracted services. So all the air handlers and rooftops now. We were just doing rooftops and try to self-perform all the exhaust fans on the roof as well as the HVAC. And again, we weren't really being successful in meeting the timing. So this last year we competitively bid that, and we were able to get some really good pricing from the Thayer Corporation to get that work done.
All right. My next question is page 12 on the pink sheet. And it looks like it's right up near the top. It looks like some high school equipment for, looks like 26,000. What is that?
Yep, I can tell you. That's one second. So that is it's actually a $25,000 increase in the budget, and that is for the sign that is proposed for the electronic sign for the front of the high school.
Okay.
That's to support that project. That project will cost more than that, and again, we're hoping that we can get significant funding from the boosters as well as the drama and what's the other group I'm thinking of? Music, yes.
Okay. My next question is on page 13 of the pink sheets. And I want to go to the snow removal. And I'm kind of curious what exactly the account number is for the very bottom one. It's an increase of 37.14%. Not a lot, but can you define for me what is system-wide facility operation? What exactly does that account mean?
All right, so 300 is the 37.14%. That is the high school. 920 is the one below that, which is district-wide, which is flat.
Oh, that is flat. Okay.
Yeah. So and we have had an increase in our campus snow plowing this past year, and we're due for doing an overall bid for the work. I have to tell you that our current contractor has done an amazing job for us. and I've been really pleased with them. So I wanted to talk to them and see if they would hold the pricing that they had this last year. And if we could do that, then we would take and keep things the way they are. The price increase you see there change is our previous contractor decided he couldn't do it, and we were notified this fall, and that we worked with the current contractor to pick that up, and that reflects the increase in the cost we had over the prior contractor. So that just brings us back to the current cost.
Was Birdwalk here? Did we have any type of protections in that contract when all of a sudden we had somebody say that they couldn't do it?
We had a 3-year contract with options for 2 renewals, and he refused the second renewal. So it was the way we structured the contract. You know, I think that, Scott, we can talk about different ways to do that next time we catch up as a facilities group, but we typically try to do it like that so we don't have to bid every 3 years. Okay. Just to have a couple renewals, but I think maybe we do a 2-year renewal so that we get locked in and not have to continue to do that again.
Yep. All right. And then this is my last question, and then I'll turn it over to who else has questions.
Here.
Same on page 13, about 3/4 of the way down, I see district-wide equipment with an increase of 1,280.49%.
Yeah, that's the
that is.
Yeah, that's the track. That's the cost of the track.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christina.
Thanks for bringing up the track. When you gave Marge and I a tour recently, you talked about how you wanted to add an additional 2 lanes to the track. Does this amount include that or not?
It doesn't. I'm hoping that we can work that into our middle school project. At this point in time, this is just first service there. The good news is what we have is we have a urethane track, which is, it's a college level track. It's not a high school level track. It's really a step above because I keep it really short, but its durometer or the softness of it stays very consistent through a very wide range, and it wears very, very well. It's actually put down with a paver. It's really a much higher technique. So this is just to replace that wear layer, which is sprayed on the top. It's only about, I don't know, it's more than a 1/16 thick, but it's not much more than that. And it's designed just to take the wear of the spikes in the shoes and protect the base layer, which is put down by a paving machine.
Okay. Never mind. That's my only question. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions of Mr. Hanson?
Bill, can you just quickly mention the other increase in your budget, which is the treatment plant?
Right. So there's actually a couple of increases. There's an increase for the middle school SRO. That's part of a grant that we're applying for, and we're very excited to have that opportunity. I think it's going to be wonderful. There also is an increase of about $66,000 for the treatment plant, which gives us a total of $100,000 of funding for continued capital improvements on that. There is a component of that funding that I also have in the CRP funding as well, because we're going to need more like 150 to do the work we need to do. So that's work that we really need to do to be prepared for this new middle school. And it's work we need to do to flatten out the process of the plant. And just real quickly, it puts in a tank for storage of material so that we can more average the flow through the plant throughout the course of the day. Because unfortunately, the kids are only there from 7 to 3 or 4. We don't have enough night classes. I guess we got to get Tom back here and have him to have more people at night. But the flow is really tied into the school day, and we really need to broaden that out so it's more even throughout the whole day, so that it has a really level amount of treatment through the plant. So it has kind of the same retention time. The water that comes in spends the same amount of time going through the plant in the morning as it would at night. And the way to do that is with some on-site storage that we don't have. It's going to be a tank in this range of 12 to 14,000 gallons. So it's a pretty good sized tank that we're putting in underground.
Okay, Kate. You're still on mute, Kate.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can.
This is actually a question for Chris, I think, more than for you, Bill, but I'm curious why an SRO is under facilities and maintenance.
Well, I can start by answering that. All the safety security is under my budget. So Seth's cost is under my budget as well as this. So my department carries the safety and security as well as the physical plan.
Okay, that's good information. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just also so everyone's clear, this is a grant that we worked on with the town of Wyndham. However, we'd be looking at a resource officer that could cover both Jordan Small and Wyndham Middle School, being able to go back and forth.
Marge?
This grant, how many years is it the grant for, and how much of it does it cover? If we get it.
It's for 3 years, so that's the good news. And I have to get back on the percentage. I think it was a. Do we have to pay 30% and they pay the balance? It's somewhere around that, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, I'll get back to you on the number. I wanted to say it was closer to 80% of what was covered in the grant, but I'll go back to the grant document and I'll get that out to everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Seeing nobody. Thanks very much, Bill.
Thank you very much. Have a great night. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make my previous appointment. But
That's okay.
And I appreciate all your support. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you.
Bye, Bill.
Bye.
Go home.
Okay, Mike Kelly, and transportation is next.
Hey everyone, how you doing?
Hey, Mike.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. Janie, I'm a little afraid of that vicious dog you have there.
Yeah.
So anyways, getting into the budget, we'll just look at the overall increase this year is just shy of $156,000. The bulk of it will be up in the human resource section, and we'll go through that. But you can see some of the FTE adjustments from the current fiscal year into the upcoming fiscal year. One of the bigger ones, and I think was back in September, the superintendent, myself, and worked with you folks, and we made some adjustments as to how we address repairs in the garage, specifically a technician. So what we did is we took the 3 positions that existed, reduced it to 1, and we utilized the other 2 positions to create the assistant director. But that person currently works in the garage as the lead technician for the operation. And you go further down, you can see where the mechanics were reduced from 3 to 1. And there was a slight increase in the van drivers because of the demand. So it was more or less just an increase in the amount of hours. But overall, you can see the reduction of positions by just shy of a full position. On the operational side, and we've spoken, for those of you that's been here with me for the last several years, we have 33 buses that we deploy. We also have 24 vans. Broken down, we're utilizing 5 for Katahdin, 13 right in my operation itself. And the buses, what's deployed, we have 5 that are deployed in Raymond on regular routes, that is, and we have 19 here in Wyndham. Interesting enough, one of the things that I bring up every year is the amount of miles that we travel. And last year alone, we traveled over 632,000 miles. But the most interesting part, just the vans that transport, that coupled with just the students receiving special services along with the students that are assigned a homeless status, about 270,000 of those miles are just with what those vans travel during the course of the year. We also, during the course of a day, which most people don't realize, we're running 134 runs a day. And that excludes anything to do with field trips, athletics, or even the late runs that we have on a daily basis. So generally, that's what the operation looks like. As far as the increases themselves this year, some of the increases are primarily the estimate and the increase in the insurance for the fleet is a little over 13,000. These are the bigger ticket items I'll go over. Then we get into the regular employee salaries. There's an increase around 44,000. Then the temporary employee salary, which covers those additional van drivers primarily that aren't in benefited positions. So that's about another 7,000. Then you have 50,000 that's in there for health insurance. What we're looking for on the operational side, so let me back up for a second. That in itself is a little over $100,000. When we get on the operational side, we're asking for 4 buses, 3 vans, and a service truck. The buses themselves we're retiring 3 leases this fiscal year. So all we're doing is rolling some new leases out for a 5-year lease purchase program. The 4th bus there's 30,000 in there for the bus that we're purchasing after getting the award for the Volkswagen grant. So we're getting $65,000 for that, and the other 30,000 will make up the difference. And the truck itself is a $10,000 lease payment purchase for a lease purchase of 4 years in there. And then we're replacing the 3 vans, but we're just rolling 3 vans out. So it's just replacing what we had before. So generally, that's what the increases look like and the overall budget looks like.
Anybody have a question? Looks like, no, Scott.
Mike, thank you for joining us. I do have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you. And one of the very first things that I did notice when I was looking over this is obviously going down to that 1 mechanic. I can't imagine that is going to be a super easy adjustment for you guys, you know, given the information that you just gave us, you know, 33 different buses, 25 vans, 134 runs with just 1 mechanic. How much outsourcing do you guys have to do for any type of major repairs, and what type of repairs would you do in-house with just the 1 mechanic?
Well, it's kind of misleading, Scott. What we did is the assistant director is actually a mechanic, and he's a lead technician. So we went from 3 mechanics down to 2, 1 being a technician. So by moving this person in-house, what we did, the skill level of this particular person is much greater than what we've experienced over the years. So what we were outsourcing before, we're retaining inside. So it depends. If we had to do a full engine job, we would outsource that. God forbid if that would happen. Transmissions, we'd probably send out, but every other type of repair with the diagnostics we're able to do inside right now.
Okay. All right.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us, Mike. I don't know whether this is for you again or for Chris, and I really didn't dig in to find out myself, but what is the lease for the joint maintenance, and how did it increase or decrease this year?
I'm just going to give you a rough number off the top of my head, which is somewhere around $196,000.
This year?
This year.
Yep.
And there's an ever so small drop that's minuscule that we'll see over the payment. So that's a pretty stable payment around that $195,000. In addition, we also do have some costs coming in with our portion of electricity, heat, which is our percentages. So, but that payment is pretty much the same as what we have for this year.
And the heat and all that jazz, that's in Bill's budget, the increase for that?
I would need to double check where I want to say that it's in Mike's budget because we can bill it direct back for subsidy.
Okay.
But let me double check with Stacy just to make sure that I have it correct. But most likely it's in Mike because again, it is eligible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Marge?
Well, I guess it's for Mike, but Chris, the pre-K, did you say it was in the budget, right? The amount that no, it's not in the budget, but the amount that the state is allocating us.
So, yeah, let me just, and Christine's going to hit a couple of those things later on tonight, but first, the bus is in the budget.
Oh, okay.
And just for those of you who haven't been on the board very long, There was a time with a previous board that buses weren't replaced on a given maintenance or replacement schedule. And if I remember correctly, it was either 9 or 11 buses that had to be purchased in 1 year. And so Mike has done a great job of just basically it's rolling the debt so that as buses come off lease, we're purchasing new buses and trying to keep a stable budget number. So that bus is already there, and Mike would have to do some modifications to that bus. What's not in there would be the driver and the aides that it would take to support the pre-K.
Scott?
Okay. So Chris, can I ask one more?
Yeah.
Related. Okay. So would that part, the driver, and that's not in his budget, will that be in before? You had mentioned, well, probably be in Christine's, as there was a figure there of the additional cost. Oh, okay.
So well, and that's a decision the board's going to need to make about going forward with pre-K. If the board makes that decision, and Christine has some additional news, which she's going to kind of share here, but the driver would be put into Mike's budget, and all the associated costs would be then spread out across the buildings for where they need to go. And again, that's directly related to gaining our subsidy.
Okay, thanks.
Chris, may I, or Janie, may I make a comment? As far as the buses themselves, those 4 buses that are being requested, it had nothing to do with pre-K. What we're just doing is utilizing one of those buses for the pre-K program if it came along. So we're just replacing existing resources that we have within the operation. And what we're also doing, even though how we staffed the Raymond Elementary run for those volunteer students from Wyndham, we're utilizing a spare driver. And so what we're doing is on a daily basis, we're shuffling. So in other words, we would be using that same bus for that same purpose if we went forward with the pre-K program, but we wouldn't have a driver. So that's why I'm asking for the driver.
Okay, thank you.
You finished, Marge?
I'm done.
Okay, Scott, and then Kate.
All right. So I did want to ask you, Mike, as far as bus fleet insurance, it does look like it did go up a little bit, not by a huge amount, but I'm just kind of curious. Every now and then we get an email that a car drove into the back of one of our buses or anything like that. And me being, having a CDL, when you're driving a commercial vehicle, anytime you are in an accident, state police will find you at fault. It doesn't matter if they drove into the back of you, the side of you, whatever. So are some of those contributory to the price increase for the fleet insurance?
So I'll just, in speaking to our agent, I'm not aware of any sort of a price increase that's due to accidents or experience issues that the RSU has had. It's the normal increases that we try to budget in, and as that number then gets finalized, we'll make the adjustment. But again, it's always easier to reduce a budget than it is to add.
Okay. All right.
And Scott, to your question, as far as anything of significance, as far as accidents or anything of that sort, I hate to say this, but the last time that I recall, it was something that totaled the bus, but that we were not at fault, and the other party's insurance company paid for the damages.
Okay. I know that I can't remember what the trooper's name is. He's part of the CDL outfit with the Maine State Police, and he will go around to businesses and he'll pull up his laptop and he'll actually show you what your DOT driving score is. And so just based on conversations that I've had with him, but that accident that you're referring to, out of the majority of the accidents that, we get a quick email or something like that from Chris saying that a bus was involved in an accident. What would you say that the typical damage amount is on one of our vehicles?
Typically, I think the most, outside the bus itself that I referred to, the accidents since my history here, the ones with the larger amount of damage was with vans. And, but as far as the amount of damage, typically if you have some of these minor fender benders where a bus is backing and hits a vehicle that's unattended. So there's no claim for damage on our particular vehicle, but there may be like less than $1,000 of the other vehicle, and that's very infrequent.
Okay. And then if I may, I was looking over some of the workers' comp, and I just want to say, you know, I'm sure you're involved with the safety committee. I know that, you know, unfortunately with the amount of walking that your drivers were doing, you know, walking all the way across the parking lot to get to their buses, there was a lot more slips and trips with your division. And how is that? How's the new facility been as far as that in those respects?
Well, for the most part, the drivers are much closer proximity to their vehicles, especially the van drivers, and the treatment program has increased significantly. It's a combination between our folks from buildings and grounds, as well as public works, and the terrain's different too. Versus the other one. It was quite a distance where they were walking. And a lot of the injuries that were occurring was either between the buses or as they're traversing across the parking lot on a downhill grade. And that's where they were falling.
Okay. All right. All right. That's all I got. Thank you very much, Mike.
Great,
Thanks.
Scott. Thank you.
Kate?
Next year, will all of our buses have bus arms?
We don't have money in the budget for extended stop arms right now. We can see, and the superintendent and I talked about that. We want to see where our year-end balances are to increase that. The problem is, Kate, is some of the spare buses, especially with the age and things of that sort, we don't necessarily need to put extended stop arms on those. So any of our frontline buses, our goal is to try to outfit them with as many as possible, and understand that some of the areas that the buses are deployed, we don't really have a lot of stop arm activity as people going through the red lights. What we've done so far, and we're almost completed, is that most of the high traffic volume areas are covered with the extended stop arms. So we're moving in that direction. The only shortcoming on some of the stop arms, especially during the winter months, is because they deploy much slower than the factory installed stop arm. So sometimes when the temperature drops between 20 below, we have to deactivate them because they just don't extend. You're just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. So that's
Chris, thank you, Mike.
Yes.
I know there's been some activity with Odyssey Angels and whatever to get more bus arms, fundraise for those. Are they in the loop as far as our needs so they don't keep fundraising for bus arms that we don't need?
They are in the loop. I think they've finally reached their goal of half the fleet. I think they've reached that 15 bus arms for where they were going, and I think they were finishing that. So with the 4 new buses, the buses will come through with the extended stop arms, so that will get us up to 19. And then we'll take a look at the remaining part of the fleet to see which ones that we really need to get some arms on, and we'll take care of that within Mike's budget in order to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions. Thanks so much, Mike, for participating. Oh, you had a question.
that was a bye. Sorry.
Okay.
Bye, Marge.
And you can meet Rosie anytime. She'll.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's now time for public comment, and I'm really not sure how that goes. Mr. Howell, do you have an explanation? I see there's one person who's listening in.
Unmute myself first. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute the person. If they have public comment, this would be their opportunity.
Person who is listening in, do you have any questions or comments?
No, hi, Chris. This is actually DJ Lavasser, coordinator at Belt Ed.
Hi, how are you?
Just kind of good. Just kind of listening. But I don't have any questions.
Well, thank you for listening in. Okay. So now it's time for superintendent's report.
So first of all, I just want to congratulate the board for navigating this world of Zoom. I think you've done an outstanding job for your first board meeting, being respectful of each other, having your questions answered. And then also, I applaud you for continuing on the business of the district during a time which is unprecedented for anybody. And it's always interesting when you sit on a conference call with your attorneys and say, that what you're dealing with is unprecedented. None of the issues that you're dealing with have seen the light of a courtroom. And so this is our best thinking. And so we are in definitely unprecedented times for an extended school closure. Looking at this point as 5 weeks and then reevaluating and then relying on our folks at Maine Department of Education and Maine CDC, whether or not that they feel that it's safe for us to open. And so I wanted to cover a couple things within my superintendent's report tonight. And I have a document which I'll be sharing with the board either late tomorrow or you'll be receiving it on Friday, which is called the Continuity of Learning Plan. And if you think about it, 2 weeks ago, we sat as a board at the Wyndham Chambers and we had the opportunity to meet face-to-face. And in 2 weeks, we have taken an entire school district and we have taken it from face-to-face where it has been for the last 100+ years to now a virtual environment. And so much has changed during that period of time. And so if you think about where we've been back on March 14th, it was a Saturday night. Decision was made across Cumberland County as well as majority of counties across the state to close down districts. And Christine and I had met that day here in the office, and really our goal at that point was we need to give families the opportunity to have materials, and we also need to work with our teachers to make sure that they have what they need to provide resources to families in a very short period of time. And so I really want to applaud Christine Hessler and Christine Burtonay and Richie Vickers and Lisa Garno, who came in on a Sunday and spent an entire day designing an RSU 14 closure website and then working to get resources so that they were in the hands of teachers Monday morning. And then by Monday evening, they were in the hands of the community as we were going forward. So this week, we've spent, or I should say last week, we spent a lot of time kind of working out the bugs of that website, making sure that we had all the materials that were there and present. And then by Friday of this past week, we were coming to the realization that this was not going to be a 2-week closure and that it was going to be a much longer closure looking towards the end of April break. And so during that time, Friday, we met with the administrators and said, we need to start planning and make sure that we have resources and that teachers have what they need for what's going to be 4 weeks out of school. And so again, I just want to applaud all of the staff members of RSU 14, all of our teachers, our support staff, our administrators, our central office administrators, for creating some documents in a very, very, very short period of time. And I'm actually just going to share, which I think I can do. I can share my screen and share my desktop. Can everybody see my desktop?
Yep.
And so over the last couple of days, a couple documents have been completed and then shared out with staff. And so one of which is for every single school role within the RSU, how staff members are going to be interacting, what their expectations are, things that they can be doing to support students. Because one thing that we quickly came to realize is we needed to make sure that every single person had an understanding of what their roles were and what their responsibilities were. So this went out to staff. I think this went out Monday with an accompanying letter. And then also guidance that we'd received from Governor Mills, which is that every single support staff member, every single hourly employee, the districts need to keep them employed during this time of closure. And so again, here are the expectations. The other document, and I would like to again applaud a number of people who worked to develop this, but to really take what we had done in the first week of the closure, which is providing materials as quickly as possible out to students and to families, but then to look at what's this kind of second phase look like. So what are some suggested timeframes for student engagement? In addition, so for each of the building and phase levels, so at the primary level, the middle level, the high school level as well. So getting families to kind of get a little bit more, for those who want it, adjusted to a schedule, and for those families who can't do a schedule because of their current learning situation or because of their current family situation, the chance to work asynchronously, which means that while class is going on, things are recorded, or while activities are going on, things are recorded, and then families can revisit them later. We have spent quite a bit of time making sure all of our staff is either up to speed with Seesaw or Google Meets or Google Classroom. So our technology folks have been working to do that. We've been kind of codifying how we're going to be checking in with families daily to make sure that they have what they need, and then working across all the different content areas with menus of planning supports for classroom teachers, for all of our support teachers, for our applied arts, making sure that they have what they need. So quite a bit of things that have been done in a very short period of time so that we can make sure that we're supporting our families not only right now, but again, with an extended school closure. The good news in all of this, because there's always a piece of good news, there's always a ray of sunshine. The last 2 weeks that we've lost, we would have typically been doing MEA testing, and they would have been weeks of school that would have been interrupted because of testing schedules. And so those tests do not need to be made up. The commissioners received a waiver for that. And so the one silver lining is we've lost 2 disrupted weeks to disruption. So that's one good piece to that. The other thing I also just want to really thank is the folks that have contributed to the backpack program, the folks that have helped to then come in and assemble meals for the community. And I think it's very important for the community to know that we do not receive reimbursement for the food that is being provided at this time to students who do not have the ability, or families that are suffering because of the shutdown. We do not reach the threshold for the 50% threshold for satellite feeding program. And so all of this has to come out of food that is then purchased through Backpack. We've had some donors who've stepped up to help out with that. It's unclear at this time what level of reimbursement that we might receive from the state from the food program. But as we start thinking of year-end materials, which is something that I'll share with finance, we're losing a considerable amount of revenue right now for our food program. And if you think about it, we are continuing to pay employees within that program, but we're not receiving that usual reimbursement that we have. The other thing that we are really trying to focus in on is that we know we have some learners and we have some families that have kind of fallen silent. We have social workers, we have guidance counselors, we have assistant principals, we have principals that are working to check in, we have teachers that are working to check in, and everyone is doing their best to make sure that families are feeling supported during this. But, you know, everyone right now is having a bit of disruption in their life. And I heard a great quote from another superintendent the other day, which is that 75% of what we're all feeling is social emotional right now, and 75% of our role is to make sure that we're supporting families in those social emotional pieces. The other 25% is academic at this point. The other thing that we need to be very mindful of is that everyone's lives have been disrupted. And during the times that we would have traditionally had school, we know we have high school students that are now having to care for younger siblings. We have parents that are trying to work from home as well as trying to juggle their own students' education. And so to the extent that we can provide opportunities for students that can happen at all different times of the day, then we're going to go ahead and do that to make sure that we're meeting the needs of kids. And so we're continuing to work on this. The board, you'll receive all those documents again, either Thursday or Friday. The last thing that I'll add is special education. Lisa and her staff have been working to create distance IEPs to help support families. So case managers will be reaching out. We will start the process next week of rescheduling IEPs that were missed. And we'll be looking to fulfill students' IEPs within this digital world to the best that we can. Not aware at this point of any relaxation that's been given to IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We're still responsible. The guidance we received is basically do the best you can in these trying times. And again, I think that people have kind of stepped up. I will tell you, as superintendent of a virtual district, it's not the district feel that I like. I want to go into schools, I want to interact with students, and it's very strange and very odd to walk the halls and nobody's there and be interacting just with adults at this point. So I am very hopeful that we will be able to go back to school. But one of the requirements that we have in order to waive these days, and these days will not, school's happening right now, so students won't have to come back and make up all these. But it's for you as a board to review our continuity of learning plan to see how we're approaching this. And you don't actually have to send the plan to DOE in Augusta. What we are required to do is just have on record the fact that you voted to accept, here's what's happening and here's what we do. So again, this is a work in progress. I am really proud of the work that our staff members have done in a very short period of time. And I'm also proud with the number of creative ways that teachers and support staff and administrators are reaching out to families to try to create a little bit of normalcy in what has become a very different world and environment for many of our families.
I had a question about rescheduling IEPs. How and where?
So at this point, IEPs are either going to be done through Zoom or through Google.
Okay.
And if a parent doesn't want to do that, then case managers will look at options for how to move forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready to move on? Kate, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Chris, how do you see us moving forward with the food situation? Are we curtailing at the end of the so-called school year, or is there an expectation to go through the summer, given the circumstances, if they should be extended? And how do you see us paying for this?
So I will start with, actually, Christine, do you want to take this? You've been working with Jeannie on a grant.
Sure. So Jeannie received information regarding a grant up to $50,000 that we could apply for. And I'm looking for the title, No Kid Hungry. Reaching out to school districts, recognizing that this is causing some significant financial strain. And so we are drafting multiple objectives to meet the requirements of the grant and focusing on expanding our current numbers of families we're able to reach and extending the amount of time we're able to do so. And so we're working on that. That's one avenue. Folks have been reaching out, wanting to help. And Jeannie is working with them on ways that they can donate to support the continuation of the food distribution model that she's set up. So currently we have a Tuesday, Friday, distribution model at Raymond Elementary and at Wyndham Middle School. And families are coming. We have at this time around 75 families each day for the Wyndham site and about 25 families each day for the Raymond site. We're hoping to see those numbers grow as word gets out and we continue to message out that that is available to all families.
So just Kate, going to your second question there, which is for duration. Going beyond the school year is financially, I'm not sure that we can head in that direction. I think we'd have to look at other possible feeding programs. I think the other thing it's important for the board to know is that right now we are projected to lose, depending on the length of closure, between $200,000 and $500,000 in revenue from loss of food sales, which we'll need to cover through year-end balance. We've put a spending freeze on. And so at this point, funds at the end of the year that we may have voted into capital projects for Bill moving forward, I think what you're going to see is those are going to be significantly reduced. And that's just to cover our obligations to make sure that we're paying our hourly employees through food service with that loss in revenue, to then go above that to what we then can cover for helping the community. I think long-term, we've got to be looking for grants or other supporters in order to make that happen.
Thank you.
Okay, we all set? All right, our next, thank you, Chris. And our next presentation is from Christine Frost-Bertinet.
Thank you, Janie. So the purpose of this presentation is to begin to respond to questions that were posed when we first presented about the possibility of a pre-K program. Any concerns and questions that you raised, we'll try to walk through those, give you time for any additional questions and or concerns should they arise. And then I've provided some additional documentation that we won't go over at length. I'll do a cursory overview of that documentation, give you time to explore that so that at an upcoming board meeting, you have an opportunity to vote on whether you want to move forward with pre-K programs starting for next school year, or if you decide not to move forward at this time. But the goal here is to provide you with everything you need to make that informed decision. So if we start, the document in your board packet is entitled Pre-K Presentation to the School Board. And what I did was I took the 4 categories of questions and concerns and tried to make sure that we responded to everything. So the first category, if you will, was around concerns expressed with a full day program model versus a half day pre-K program model. And when we think back to the days of a half day kindergarten versus a full day, that's a transition for 5-year-olds and for 4-year-olds. Certainly a full day is a long day. And so some points here to note, the proposed plan is a 4-day per week full day model. It would be a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday program with Wednesdays, because they are early release days. School would not be in session for our pre-K students. The program design also does incorporate rest time and play time. It's about experiential learning and community building. And so we really feel that the proposed model is very responsive to the needs of 4-year-olds, so that they have that balance of rest and play and inquiry and learning time. It's a nice, healthy balance. Also, it's important to note that the Department of Ed does recommend a full day model. So our proposal's in alignment with that recommendation. And the other piece is that full day programming is often more desirable for working families as compared to a half day model where they may need to coordinate other daycare, preschool options for their children with the half day model in mind. And there are some other points there that you can review in your notes. I'll try to hit the highlights here. So when we move into the second topic question, that was around just, was there a pre-K committee and the nature of that work thus far? So I have the committee members here, and I'll review those for the listeners. The listener, I believe DJ is still on the phone, and anyone else. So Chris Howell, myself, Lisa Garno, the Director of Special Services, Christine Hessler, Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment, Beth Peavy, the Assistant Principal at Raymond Elementary, where the two programs would be housed should we move forward for next year. Randy Crockett, Raymond Elementary and Jordan Small Principal. Kyle Rhodes, Wyndham Primary School Principal. Jeannie Riley, the Nutrition Director, and Mike Kelly, Transportation Director. So as Lisa Garno notes later in her document that you can review, many of these folks participated in 2015 in the initial conversations in RSU 14, and we have some new folks coming to the table now to help us with this next iteration of a proposal. As far as meeting dates, I've put the dates there for you to review. There are really 4 different categories of meetings that have taken place. We have initial stages of budget planning, and that conversation has been ongoing as we've received most current numbers. Transportation, talking about what that model would look like from busing, staffing, having a monitor on the bus, the seats that you need to install with the 5-point harness system so that our youngest riders would be safely transported. CDS, Child Development Services and Special Education Programming. Lisa Garno, Director of Special Services, and I met with Lori Whittemore from the Portland CDS. And we talked about what it would look like for us to offer special education services and how we would partner with CDS. And we'll talk a little bit about the potential revenue source there through that partnership. And then just general planning. And I included under the February 25th meeting, 2 documents. One you've seen before, and I apologize, the last time I included information in your board packets, I had taken off the draft on the flyer so that you could read the most current language proposal on the flyer, but this is a draft, and this moving forward requires board approval. And so we want to make sure you have everything you need to make that decision. And the other piece that was in here was the informational meeting that we had scheduled, but we had to postpone or cancel for now and see where things go with the pandemic. So we have canceled that March 30th meeting. The third topic question area was really related to cost center, budget, and other specific program questions. So that's a meatier section for us to review. So the projected total costs at this time, we're at $284,697.15. The state subsidy, and this has to do with the 32 spaces that we needed to submit to the state if we were even anticipating applying for a pre-K program. Those 32 spaces comes to, or the 32 students comes to $254,845.72, which leaves the local cost share at $29,851.43. I've included the cost of salary and benefits for both the 2 teachers that would be needed, as well as the 2 educational technicians that would be needed. Again, just as a reminder, each class would have 16 learners and 2 adults. Another question that came up was around the lottery process and how to determine the makeup of the class, and really thinking about equity and access and who would have access. So we're proposing a 50% of the total students enrolled would be qualifiers for free and reduced lunch. That would be 8 students per class, 4 students per class, so a total of 8 students with identified disabilities who need special education services. Excuse me. And then 24 of the spaces would be reserved for Wyndham students, Wyndham residents, and 8 for Raymond, and that's proportionate to the current size, the percentage of students enrolled currently in kindergarten for each town. Another question was around waiting until the state, if the state requires universal pre-K. The committee feels it would behoove us to move forward with a slow implementation. Starting with 2 programs gives us time to look at the program design, the resources. Do we have enough resources? Thinking about the professional development needs, and making adjustments and growing the program model. Certainly if the state mandates universal pre-K down the road, it would give us time to really have a sense of the best program model and feel that we're ready for that. There was a comment about the concern around shortage of drivers and ed tech substitutes teachers, and how do we address that? We would want to post, should we move forward with this, we'd want to post as soon as possible so that we can ensure that positions are filled, so that we have the driver and the monitor on the bus, the aide on the bus rather, and then we could hire the 2 teachers and the 2 ed techs. Impact on local daycares. This is sometimes an expressed concern from local providers. Really the program would be targeting children who are not already accessing local private programs for the most part. When you look at the class makeup, we're really trying to initially get to the students who aren't already having that 4-year-old program model. And so, it is anticipated, and I did review these notes with Nicole Medor, the early childhood specialist at the Department of Education. It is anticipated that down the road, the state moves to a universal pre-K model. But I do think, or I know from other folks and programs, that they are finding ways of diversifying their program offerings to offset any potential reduction in enrollment. Is it the right time to implement pre-K when we have Raymond in the middle of a withdrawal proposal? And what would happen should Raymond withdraw? That would be a determination Raymond would make in considering whether they want to move forward with continuing the programs that are housed up at Raymond Elementary School, or that would be housed. And then Wyndham would need to examine a space issue and look at whether or not it's feasible to start programs on site in Wyndham. Do we have the space at this time? As far as transportation concerns, in working with Mike, he has estimated between 35 and 40 minutes is a reasonable estimate of a total bus ride length. And so there would be 2 pickup and drop off locations, one being at Wyndham High School and the other being at Mill Street in Raymond. The 1 bus, the 1 aide, and parents would get the children to that pickup location, and then the aide would help with getting them securely harnessed into their seat belt. The 4th question was posed, would the board need to vote? At that time, we didn't need to vote. We were giving you the initial program proposal. At this point, moving forward at an upcoming board meeting, we would need your vote of approval or determination whether we move forward or not for next year. What I then asked was Lisa Gardo to give you folks her thinking from a special education, special services director viewpoint in response to each of these 4 question categories. I'm not going to go over those at length, but I just wanted to draw your attention to a few points. First, around the full day program model, From a special services director viewpoint, she feels that that would allow for more options to provide special education services to students identified through CDS, and it allows us that additional year to start working with children on providing specially designed instruction in the area that's identified. And moving into the topic 3 or question 3 around cost center and budget. As I mentioned earlier, there is some potential revenue here. Lisa goes over that. In our meeting with Lori Whittemore from CDS, if we were providing the service, speech and language, for example, they reimburse at over $100 an hour for that billable hour of service delivered. And so when we think about the total number of children that we would reserve spaces for with identified disabilities, and then us taking on the special education servicing, we would be partnering with CDS and they would be paying us for that service that's delivered. And so there's a potential revenue source there that could offset the local share cost of $29,000+ dollars. So Lisa Garno has some other information that you'll want to review. And then the last 2 or 3 pages rather came from Nicole Medor. I asked her to provide some data to look at since 2015, since the preschool expansion grant initially started, and then the implementation of the Pre-K for Me program, they've been closely monitoring many different data points. So you'll be able to see a comparison from last year, 2018-19, as compared to the previous year of 17-18, in many different areas: social emotional data they've collected, language, cognitive literacy, mathematics, upper and lowercase letter identification, beginning sounds, print awareness, rhyme, etc. And they close with, she closes rather with some data they've collected around behavioral regulation and the growth in many areas for you to review, to consider the potential benefits of getting 4-year-olds into school, working with us down the road. I think it's a great model, and it depends on whether or not you folks feel we're ready to move forward at this time. So I'm going to pause and open it up if you have any other questions or concerns that I can work on.
Kate? You're still on mute, Kate. You're still on mute. There, oh. There
Okay.
you are.
Hello. Thanks, Christine. This is very comprehensive. I appreciate the information. Refresh my memory. I thought we had to make a decision by April 1st, and we had to hold a community, whatever that deal is. Could you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yes, I meant to. Thanks, Kate. So the deadline for the application is now April 30th. So that gives us time. So between now and my ability to complete the application, should you wish for us to move forward, we have a little more wiggle room. So April 30th is the deadline. And then the other part of your question, where I did speak with Nicole about having to cancel the community meeting. If we need to hold that at a later time, I think there's going to be a level of flexibility, understanding what's happening right now. And so we're not going to try to pull people together, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So what I'm going to do is include in the application the documents and the invites and our attempts, and then come up with a plan as soon as we would be able to get to invite local folks back to the table to talk about the program model.
May I ask a follow-up, please? Ma'am, yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. In the composite of the classroom, you said you're targeting, aside from CDS, kiddos who are not in preschool programs. How would you identify those little ones if they're not plugged into any kind of anything?
Well, to begin, the application would go out and anyone who has an interest would apply. And then we would use those different qualifiers, the 50% free and reduced lunch, making sure that we have a certain number of spaces reserved for children with identified special needs, et cetera. So that statement's more around the program is designed to really make sure that everyone in the community has access to a pre-K model, whether that's the choice of the family to go the private route or to have access to the public pre-K, that you're trying to broaden the scope of the families, making sure that we have as many students as possible heading into kindergarten with a pre-K experience.
Great.
So it's not, I shouldn't have said targeting, we're trying to cast a wider net in partnership with our local private providers to make sure that more and more students are heading into that K experience with that background.
Thank you, Christine.
Sure.
Scott?
Christine, I had a question as far as the topic number 3, where we're discussing the cost of salary and benefits. You had put on there that the subsidies will help cover 2 teachers, 2 ed techs. Does that does not include the bus driver and the aide for that bus, does it?
In the projected total cost, Scott, that includes the bus driver and the aide in that top $284,697. That does include the bus driver, the aide, and the fuel, the fleet fuel, which is, I believe, around $3,700 for the year to run the bus back and forth on that route.
Okay.
That's an average of 55 miles round trip a day. So those are in the top projected costs. That includes everything, okay. Teacher salary, ed tech drivers, etc.
Okay. And then I guess my next question would be, what is the thinking behind the school day start time and stop time? I'm curious, do we actually need to add a whole nother route and another bus, or move a bus out of one route to cover these little kiddos, or would it be after drop off of our elementary kiddos?
So the thinking currently is that they would start and end at the same time as the other students. So they follow that. It's very much, you can take a K-5 school, and it's now a pre-K-5 following the same schedule for the most part. They're more in alignment with the kindergarten in terms of the delayed start. So the other part of your question was cost savings. Should we include them in the current route as opposed to taking a bus that is dedicated to pre-K? Is that what you were saying?
Well, I'm kind of curious. So I feel like Mike Kelly is already stretched thin as it is. Does he have, I'm assuming that we need to have a totally separate route, a bus route for these kiddos, correct?
So the reason that's the current proposal, and the reason being that it's ideal if you can have an aide on each bus to assist children with buckling and unbuckling the 5-point harness. The seat has 2, they fold down out of the backs of the seat, so older students can also ride the bus. And it takes a little bit to get another adult to help the children get into the routine and get on. And so instead of having children on, several children on one bus and another, and then requiring an aide on all of those buses to have them join the current route, it seemed to be cost effective to move to 1 driver, 1 aide, 1 pre-K designated bus. It was less expensive.
If I can just also add, Scott, we currently are running a bus from Manchester to RES every single day, where kids who are accessing RES versus going to WPS, and there's just a handful of students that are being driven by a spare. So we need the bus regardless. It's whether or not that bus comes equipped with all those little seats for the little guys and gals in order to be able to get on. But it's a current route. It would be starting just at Wyndham High School.
The other note in the original document that I put into the board packet for this evening, the numbers were a little off. And tonight, so you'll notice over a $10,000 difference reduction actually. And that is because the original quote for the bus seats was the manufacturer cost. But if the bus comes equipped with the seats already in place, the 16 seats we'd need for the 32 children, it's $10,000 less around there. And so if you're looking at, if you printed out the document, that's why there's a difference.
So as Mike presented his budget tonight, there is a rotation this year, right, Chris?
With buses?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a couple spares right now, and so right now a spare is being used to do that run, which typically are the older buses in the fleet are running in the spares, so it'd be one that's due for replacement.
Okay.
Would be that.
So the thinking behind that is we would just replace one of those older buses with one of these buses that actually has all of the
required seats on it.
Okay.
And then eventually, when we do have the opportunity to go to a full pre-K because of space, those seats could be allocated across buses because you can take them out.
Okay.